Hello. All right. I think that's most of the ad breaks. I hope. But if not, we'll give it an extra couple minutes, especially if people come late. But welcome back to another stream with me if you have been to one of my streams. And if not, welcome. It's nice to meet you digitally. But as you can see, my cat Peanut Butter is in the background. She will be my coding buddy, my rubber duck, throughout the next few streams, presuming she's in my window for the next few streams. And as for me, my name is Cecilia. And yeah, so today, and as you've seen, like we're all talking about Career Week and how everybody should be doing projects and getting ready for interviews and whatnot. And there are a couple coaches talking about portfolios. So this will be yet another portfolio series, but I think it'll be pretty worthwhile, especially if maybe you might be intimidated by doing a fully fleshed out portfolio on your own, or maybe you're like, I'm tired. I've been churning out all these other projects and I just really want something easy and I can just plug and go and it'll generate for me. Whatever your reason may be, my hope is that this series will kind of get you over the hump of maybe that fear of making your own portfolio, or just make it a little more fun and easy, especially if you're intimidated, or again, make life easier. But before I keep going on any further, quick check, volume's good. No weirdness, no scratchiness, nothing. People can read what's on the screen, hopefully. Let me see if I can zoom in some more. I cannot. But if you're not able to see or you're not able to hear me clearly, please let me know, so that way it just helps everybody, especially if somebody's watching after the fact, which you can catch any of these streams on our YouTube channel for MLH. Hello, welcome. We've got a small crew. Let me go ahead and get rid of that banner. But if you haven't checked in, now's a great time before we get started. Let me go pull that link really fast. If it will post, come on. There we go. All right, if you haven't had the chance to check in, go ahead and do that now. Best to get your points for watching as soon as you can. But today, hopefully you'll give me some grace and patience. I just submitted my PhD documents, so I'm building back up to doing a full-fledged project, which is why I was like, hey, let's do a simple version, and let's take it easy and slow and make this fun and knowledgeable. It may not be the fastest tutorial in the West, and that's okay, because just because tutorials exist out there and they certainly expedite your process of getting something done, it may not be the best way in terms of making sure you understand. So if you have been to any of my streams, you know I like to explain things. I really want to make sure that you walk away understanding something, even if maybe in the moment you're like, well, I don't want to do that, or like, why would I do it this way? My hope is that you'll understand some of the design decisions, or you'll question me on them, because I do welcome people to, hey, why didn't you use this? Or, you know, have you thought about this? Or I would love to see a feature like XYZ. I really encourage chat interaction because of that, recognizing that sometimes y'all put this on as a passive thing, and I get it, but it does ensure that, like, if there's anywhere that I should stop and spend more time on, that you all let me know. Now, again, if you're not familiar, I typically do some notes at the very beginning to kind of get an idea of like what I did to prepare. My cat has decided, oh, she has moved, cool. I thought she was jumping around and running around demanding to be let out of my office. Right. So with the notes that I have, I don't share these or post them somewhere, but they are a way for me to keep on track for what we're trying to do during the stream. And so you'll see that I've made some notes about installing and setup and like picking what you like, and that our end goal is going to be a simple, quote unquote, portfolio that pulls GitHub repo information so we don't have to manually do it ourselves. I also added in some extra things, like we should have some basic blogging, because that seems to be where a lot of folks are going, or at least to showcase other forms of knowledge and writing competence, which is a very good thing to have, particularly in this job economy. And maybe something else that maybe somebody might mention in the chat that they want to see, which I do pivot a lot, where I take feedback from the chat and I'll say like, okay, like you want this thing, let's see if we can make it happen. Or if I can't make it happen, then here's how I would go about doing it, just to make sure that somebody could go off and do it themselves. So that's the goal by the end of the 3 workshops that I'll be hosting in this series. I would say that, to be honest, this whole thing could actually be done in 2 hours. But again, I really like to focus on making sure you understand. So for today, as you can see, I have not quite planned part 2 because I wanted to see where we would end up with part 1. I had a little bit of hunting to do while I was putting together the notes because I'll be honest, I really don't interact with Ruby too much. And while I'm aware of Jekyll, someone usually like set it up for me when I was doing something project documentation based, so I never really got around to doing it myself. And so I'm like, okay, well now I'm doing it, so let's like dig in, right? And so we're going to start off by talking about like, well, why are there like a bunch of us doing different portfolios? Why did I choose Jekyll over like Gatsby or something else? And then we'll actually get up into the like setup and how it all works and what we can do. And really just my goal is to show you how I built this, frankly, or like worked together with this to figure out enough that I could give a workshop on it, which would be like, high level workshop. With the intent being that you could also then go on and do something similar yourself, where it's like, hey, maybe I don't know this thing, Gatsby, for example, let's say. How would I go about exposing myself to it, getting a better understanding, and making sure that I can proceed in such a way that I'm not breaking everything under the sun, but that I do know what's going on. And that's my thinking of how we'll occupy the next like hour and 45 minutes. Again, very theory based, but with good intention to give you justification as to why we're doing this. Because it does seem very simple. And for the most part, it really is, which is great. It's just, okay, well, yes, minima is the theme that we'll work with to start with for today, but we'll transition into different things and we'll adjust it based on what we want. Okay, so let's get into the first bit, being portfolio. Like, all the other coaches are also making portfolios and websites and resumes and CVs and everything. And that's just a lot of different ways to display information. It's not everyone must do everything. And in fact, everyone has their own preference of things. Technically, even my portfolio is homespun up using React. But I actually went through a very long time ago and was like, everybody has the same portfolio and I hate it. And as someone who likes design, I want to do something that is similar in what is aesthetically pleasing, but remove some of the things that really irked me. And so when I was making my portfolio, I was like, okay, well, everybody's doing it React. I'll learn React, whatever. And that's how I ended up with a React-based portfolio, which great. It's hosted on GitHub Pages, so it's free. I have my own domain, so that part's not so free, but yay, cool. I figured that out. But if I were to go back to my younger self who did have to do a very bare bones HTML, CSS, JavaScript website way back in the day, because I am a PhD student, I would have loved to have had Jekyll available or had even known about it because it would have made my portfolio so much better. I could have just hit the ground running and not turned this into like some massive project that I'm always super stressed about. Which is not to say that the other portfolios that coaches are doing right now is necessarily stressful. I just didn't have someone doing a workshop on it or like doing a tutorial. And the tutorials I found, I'm like, I'm intimidated. No thanks. So that's kind of where Jekyll comes in to be actually kind of impressive. When I was looking into Jekyll, I thought, well, it's already used with GitHub Pages. And if you're not familiar with it, people will use Jekyll as a static website generator. And now when you associate with GitHub Pages, which lets you host static websites through a GitHub IO domain, it means that you can update things, you can add blog posts, and that's kind of the beauty of Jekyll is that it gives you all these templates, all this setup, so you just have to plug and play, which is a beautiful thing when you're already overwhelmed with your classes, and now you have to look for jobs, and now you have to, and so on, right? And so things that make your life easier are always lauded. So that said, there are other static website generators out there. And let me go pull this up really fast because I have another thing that I wanted to show people. Did I leave it up? No. Great. I closed that tab. Silly me. Okay. So versus, not next, Jekyll. Cool. So Gatsby versus Jekyll. I've actually not been too exposed to Gatsby. My understanding is that it's React-based, which is awesome. But for someone who might not be interested in React or might be intimidated by React, I can see them leaning away from it or say like, well, I'm gonna, learn it. I think this is the website I went to. Nope. There was a nice little diagram that somebody had. Yeah. So Gatsby actually has a pretty cool diagram that I healthily question because it is hosted by Gatsby. But you can see that it's comparing Gatsby, Jekyll, and Hugo. And I have never heard of Hugo until I started doing research for this, where I was like, I know about Gatsby and Jekyll, but I don't know much else. But as you can see, you have static content confirmed for all three. Again, I guess I should probably explain this. Static content on a website is where what you see is what you get. The text that is there is there. There is no interactivity whatsoever with it. No API calls, to my knowledge. Nothing is being generated. Nothing is being served. It just is there. And nothing is going to be changed by filling out a form or something. Which, if you have a portfolio that has minimal interactivity, that's perfect. I've personally always been a fan of solutions should meet their needs, and not that they shouldn't go above and beyond, but in the interest of getting a portfolio out there immediately, particularly right now, which is career season, interactivity, while more impressive, delays your publishing of your website. At least that's how it goes for me. But it's a great stepping stone into what could be an interactive website. Not saying that you should use them, but just that what you want on your website. See how it's supposed to look. Filter out the things that maybe you're like, oh, this is extraneous. I don't actually need to put this up here. And so by the time you do make your interactive website, it's clean, it's minimalized, and you can really shine on the things that you're trying to emphasize there. But as you can see, it's giving you tons of different comparisons. Again, the reason I chose Jekyll was mostly because I'm like, one, I don't have much experience in Ruby, and I said, why not? I would love to have more experience. And two, I also was thinking about, well, what is faster for me to spin up? And for me, it was Jekyll. So there's that. And again, I had no idea about Hugo until I started this. But the nice thing is it is, of course, accessible, which we love that, especially if we are working toward it. It's not completely compliant, but none of them are, so it is what it is. And there's plenty of tutorials and whatnot. So going back to where we were, we've talked about why Jekyll. For me, it was just easy startup, easy, quick to go. And I got the opportunity to play with Ruby, which might be of interest. It's great for prototyping, is my understanding. Particularly, like I'm going to be using it for a future project where I'm hoping to set up some database relations, and it seems like it might be able to do that with the Rails, with Ruby on Rails specifically. So I was like, well, familiarity doesn't hurt. All right, moving on. Environment setup. My understanding, which has come about in the last few days, because again, I've been working on my PhD, is that it varies per system. There are some caveats to consider depending on what operating system you're on, which I found out because I work on both Windows and Mac. Linux, of course, will have its own experience. I do dual boot Linux, but I haven't had time to test this to be like, yes, this is the official thing of what you should do for each operating system. So I'm going to talk about just Windows and Mac today, but that is something to consider, realizing that there may be some caveats that you need to be aware of if you run a Linux system. So as you can see, these are my notes from when I was working on installing stuff. Where I am aware, because I have a mentor who was teaching me about Ruby, and she was letting me know that because I have a MacBook, because I run Mac OS, I have to be really careful not to overwrite the Ruby version that I'm using. And this like harkens back to like me and Python way back in the day when I'm like, Python, depending on what version I'm using, could overwrite something in my system. Mac OS uses a very specific version of Ruby to run some other stuff in the backend. What that is, no idea yet. That might be something, if you want to go get a fun fact, you can go Google it yourself. I haven't gotten to that point. It's in my queue of things I said I would Google later. But I believe the Mac OS version is like 2.7 or 2.3 or something. And Ruby is all the way at like 3.6 or 3.7. So the fact that my very, very recent MacBook is like an M3 or whatever is using an older version of Ruby, it's like, cool, good to know. I didn't run into that issue though with Windows, so much as I did have to make sure I had the right permissions and everything. So Mac being the most, what's it called? The word is escaping me, but I guess the most difficult, and I don't mean difficult as in hard, but difficult as in it has various caveats to think about. If you use a Mac, to use RB environment, Ruby environment. So this is kind of like PyEnv or Anaconda if you're familiar with Python, because you need to have those different versions depending on projects. But this one, I actually found it was fairly easy to get used to. It just took a little bit to figure it out. But I made a new folder on my MacBook to hold my local Ruby instance once I got started. And then it did actually find my Ruby instance, which I was like, thank goodness, I'm not ready for it to not do that. So because of the caveats that I did run into, I was like, well, let's go ahead and like walk you through getting installations done, because the documentation is a little bit bland and empty. So this is the documentation for Jekyll, where it's like, oh, install all the prerequisites, and that's another whole link. And then it's like, and then do the thing. And then just, that's it. This is the docs. This is it. Which is great for a quick start. But also, if you don't know what you're doing, it's very empty and misleading. So if you jump into requirements, there's different guides based on your operating system. And it's not just like, oh, you have a different operating system, here's a different download link. It's a little more extensive. So we'll go ahead and take a look. So yes, Windows is not an officially supported platform, but it can be used to run Jekyll with tweaks. So there's the Ruby installer, which I believe I used for my Windows installation. And then there's, if you use Bash on Windows, there's this way, etc., etc. Plenty of options. So I have already done the Ruby installer, but if you are on a Windows system, I'm going to share that link with you. So that way, if you'd like to go ahead and get started, you can. What version we're specifically using for this slew of workshops is 3.3 and up. I currently have, I think, 3.3.6, just because of some versioning with RBNV that I was able to find. And then, okay, so like I was mentioning, to use Jekyll on macOS, you need Ruby developer involvement. However, macOS comes pre-installed with Ruby. We don't recommend using that version to install Jekyll. And there is a whole article on why you shouldn't use a system Ruby, which is that the system Ruby is an older version and it has to do things. And you don't want to mess with it doing things in your laptop, because then everybody's sad because your laptop stops breaking. And so they have a number of different version managers. I ended up going with RBNV. I saw a lot of tutorials that use ASDF. I didn't quite see Truby or CTruby or RVM. But I didn't get that far in the documentation before I started Googling things on my own. So maybe I should have used it. But yeah, so one thing to consider is that if you don't already have Homebrew, you very much should have Homebrew to do this. That was definitely something that I did need in order to get started with this on a MacBook. So let me also go ahead and share this link. So that way folks who are following along can go ahead and start that process. And again, I used RBNV, so I can't speak much to CHRuby, but that's something to look into. But yes, quite a few different resources just to install Ruby, right? Which is a bit. Excellent question. So I've been using 3.3.6. If you use anything above 3.3, you should be fine. There's documentation that says Jekyll is supported 2.5 and above, and they're like, there's some pull requests that haven't been looked at, or that have been like in discussion that haven't fully gone through yet, that are like, hey, this doesn't actually work in the 2.0 versions. And they're like, yeah, we should be updating that to 3.x. So 3.3 or higher. I purposely kind of went a little below, I think it's like 3.3.6 or 7 that's up right now. Or no, it's 3.6 right now. Why am I saying this? I have this open because, yeah. So this is for Windows, which was the Ruby installer, by the way. I think I have on my Windows machine 3.3.6, and on my MacBook I have 3.3.6. Let me check really fast. I am going to share my screen for my MacBook later, if not at the next workshop, so that way you can see the differences, if any, which I don't think there should be, but where is that file? Yeah, I'm using 3.3.6 across the board. So let me go ahead and update that. And again, I am going very slow on this because it took a bit to install things. If you happen to have Ruby already, whether it's a version installed or something above 3, you can go ahead and type in gem Jekyll bundler, which are 2 separate gems that we're going to be using in order to make this whole thing work. But otherwise, if you are in the mood to go hunting, you can actually go look at the showcase that they have, which shows you all the different themes that people have made, which could be used sometime, that you might be interested in using for yourself, particularly as, again, you figure out what your portfolio is going to consist of. And again, there are tons of different ways you could do this. Jekyll can also be used for documentation. As you can see, it's used in a reference. It can be used as a main site for like a nonprofit. It can be used as your portfolio, as your CV, etc. There are many ways that people have adapted Jekyll for their uses, which is awesome, but it does mean that we are very overwhelmed for choice as to what we want to do with it. So because I was looking at this and I was like, wow, I'm overwhelmed, I went to Google instead, because I'm like, none of these really fit with what I wanted to do. That instead I went and just Googled like Jekyll themes. Yeah. I just went to supported themes. So there's a couple different supported themes that GitHub Pages does. As you can see, Minima is one of the more common ones, just because it is the default when we create a Jekyll project. And so I can show you a very quick preview if this, there we go. Yeah. So here's a very quick preview. It's very blog heavy, where instead of it being a portfolio, it would be again, blog as a focus. So if you find that you want to be a developer relations person or someone who's writing tutorials for those who want to read it, or you find that you really want to be vocal about various things, then this might be a portfolio outline for you, if that's something that you want to do, or maybe it's a secondary page. There's a number of ways to go about this. Oh gosh, I'm sorry. But I'm gonna go open the rest of them because I actually haven't looked at the rest of them. I just skipped to like, what's it called? Popular Jekyll themes, thinking that I should be able to run it on GitHub Pages, but I never actually tested it. So that's actually what I'm doing this afternoon. All right. So we looked at Minima, cute. Simple, will they give us a preview? Yes, I would like to see a preview. So now we have Architect. Seems like mostly it's about tutorials, which might be nice. It's okay. It's a little bit childish in my opinion for what I could be doing. So not the biggest fan. I'm going to go ahead and close that and that. And I'm just waiting for people to download stuff and get sorted, which is why I'm previewing what GitHub Pages automatically will render. I feel like I see this gradient a lot. I see this Jekyll approach a lot. But as you can see, these are all like one column pages. Like there's no side column, no pull-out bar, nothing. This is bare bones, pretty simple, which can be nice, depending on what you want to do. Okay, so now we kind of finally have not quite a 2-column, but at least a sidebar. But again, the same thing. It shows us what we can do with it. It's fairly straightforward. Alrighty. I'm actually really curious to see what Hacker looks like. Okay, it's pretty edgy, but I kind of vibe with the like bright green. I'm kind of here for the bright green. So as I'm looking through this, I'm realizing these are all like one column, which means I could have my various pages as maybe tabs up here or other ways to access it, or just like a slew of links somewhere. And I'm realizing I'm not really liking the fact that it's one column. I kind of prefer something a little more detailed, that gives me a little more control, looks a little more like a portfolio page. But there are a lot of people out there who do one-page portfolios where what you see on that one page is everything you need and there is nothing else. Instead, the links on the page sometimes are references to other headers in the page, which you can, of course, do with HTML, CSS. Let's see. Okay. This is more of what I'm liking, where it can navigate through things for us. Okay, so this might be nice if that's something that we wanted, that maybe we might, instead of having all these headers and names and stuff here, we might instead have things like about, or like home or something, and that would be our picture, our title, maybe a quick summary about us. Then we might have another section that has our work experience, and that could be a second header that we jump to. Then we might have our list of projects that we'll come to probably in the next workshop. And then maybe we'll have something like contact info or social media or just links. There's a lot of different ways that we could have gone about it, but I actually really like this one. I'm not a huge fan of the color combination, but I like it more. I like the navigation. This, I just don't like the colors. The colors just bother me, and I kind of don't like the layout. This is not what we saw. This is another variant of minimal. Okay, yeah, okay. So this is something I also like. Again, that 2-column format or that sidebar format where we have some form of place to put our image of ourselves or our graphic or however we'd like to represent ourselves. Quick titles, quick sidebar. I like this. That's promising. What does Modernist have? And again, the reason I'm going through this is just to show you, like, these are things that are guaranteed to work on GitHub pages. I haven't actually tested if the one that I did like will work, but I do know that GitHub also has some tutorials on setting up a portfolio. I like the contrast. That's about it. Let's see what this looks like. Same as the rest of them. And as you can see, they do look quite similar in the layout and the structures, and that's great, but can be boring, can be repetitive, especially if you're using a very common theme that others are also using, which is, again, why I was like, let's go look at other popular things. Ooh, I like the header. I don't know that I like something about it. Just, I don't like. Okay. All right. To the point of what I had looked at, there are other ways to find things. I actually just went on the search bar and I just typed in like Jekyll themes, and then I sorted by most number of stars, and that's how I ended up finding one of these, which I liked it from like a book perspective. It kind of it fit more of my vibe. Your vibe may be very different, of course. So take some time, look at the themes, see what works for you, see what you like, and also see if it would work for you. Because while I was searching for not those themes, basically, and ended up finding this one, I came across a lot of different variants. There were Jekyll templates for academics, which honestly, great for me as an academic, except I'm going back into industry, so that doesn't quite make sense. But it's great for those who are research contributors who may not know how to code, which is awesome. Some people have put their CV online, which is another thing that academics use here in the US, but CV is ubiquitous with resume outside the US. And so it can vary. And so there's different ways that people have created themes to demonstrate themselves, their work, and other aspects. Personally, I like a clean layout. And so this is what I really liked, which was this mobile first Jekyll theme where it had a toggleable side drawer. I, for whatever reason, am obsessed with side drawers. I think it's just clean design. I think it's really nice. And you can jump around these headers, of course. So this is what I'm hoping I can use. I just don't know if I can host it on GitHub pages, which again, I'll test this afternoon after this workshop. But all right. So people should have downloaded Ruby stuff by this point and probably has, let me go find that page, started looking through, figuring out the versioning, figuring out what they need to check things. Now, what I ended up doing is I have a repositories folder on my laptop and here on my desktop. And so I didn't need to use a versioning system for my Windows instance. So what you're seeing right now is my Windows laptop, my Windows desktop. But if I were showing my laptop, which again, that'll be probably tomorrow's stream or tomorrow's stream, then I would be able to show you, like, yes, I had to make a new folder, and much like I would with PyEnv, I had to say, okay, and this local instance is going to be a specific Ruby version, and then I was able to actually start things. And so go ahead and run gem install Jekyll if things are working. If not, please drop a question in the chat, because I spent way too long on my flights home yesterday running into different things and trying to make sure things worked. Right. And then let me go pull up my stuff so that way I can follow along, because I never actually set up this is actually where I can start, because I set it up on my laptop, but I didn't actually set it up on my desktop. So let me change. All right, Maker JPortfolio. I'm just making a new folder so that way I can jump into that. And then gem install Jekyll. Let's see if it works. And what you didn't see, which obviously this is extremely tiny and I can't zoom in, but I did run that same command of installing Jekyll. Ruby uses gems as their packages that they install. So if you are coming from Python, this is your pip install. If you're coming from JavaScript, this is your npm-i or npm install. And that's pretty much what I did. So I did install both Jekyll and Bundler. And so you can see it says 2 gems installed. Yay, great. Don't know why it's giving me Mac OS stuff. Oh, it's because I must have pasted something. Oh, because I right-clicked. Duh. All right. And then the next thing that we're going to go ahead and do is we're going to make a new Jekyll site. And so let's go ahead and go through Visual Studio Code at this point. Let me go ahead and open the folder. Repositories. JPortfolio. I do not have this sorted by name. Shame on me. JPortfolio. Select folder. Okay. And terminal. And let me go ahead and do that. All right. So let me double check that this actually works. Just in case. Cool. Great. We're good. I just wanted to make sure that it worked. All right. So to make a new Jekyll site, and let me also zoom in, because I know some people usually can't see too well yet. We're going to go ahead and do Jekyll new and whatever you want to name it. I just realized I goofed on my folder, so I'm going to go ahead and I don't think this is going to work, is it? Nope. Great. Let me go restart my Visual Studio Code. This is why I prefer to develop on my laptop. I got ahead of myself. This is again why we're going slow, because I'm a little discombobulated post submitting my PhD docs, which is understandable. It really is. All right. And to make sure the right thing. Okay. All right. Now we're doing Jekyll new. And I'm saying it's JPortfolio because I do already have a portfolio repo, which is why I wanted to distinguish this separately. So this is, woo, hello. I don't know what I did. What did I do? Oh my gosh. Okay, sorry. I think I accidentally opened a magnifying glass. I just wanted to zoom in. That was terrifying. That's what I get for fumble fingering. Cool. So right now, this is installing all the stuff we need by, again, making that new JPortfolio, which is, again, going to be our Jekyll site. Cool. So it's now been installed. So I believe I can just go in here. And then rather than do that, let's do Jekyll build. Let's see if you build. Okay, so I've run Jekyll build, and it's obviously giving us issues with, it's giving us deprecation warnings. I'm okay with that. That's theme dependent. We're switching themes, so it's fine. So what we don't have is a way to actually sieve it. And so if you type in Jekyll serve, it will give us eventually. Yes. Okay, so it's given us a lovely little website hosted at port 4000. And so again, it's auto-filled, awesome. It gives us all this initial stuff, which again, if you were going to do something blog heavy, this is your one-stop shop. And you can see that there's a lot of base things, like it tells us, hey, this is your theme. You can find out more about how to customize it. So if you didn't like the color combinations, like as you saw, I closed out of tabs, I just didn't like the color combinations. I could have gone back and fixed it. I just don't care to. I kind of like something that's just plug and play and go, but that's something you could spend some time on. And so again, we're using Minima, so it has obviously the GitHub, the source code, blah, blah, blah. Great. But what I really want to do is start messing with things, where we're getting into the point of where I'm like, I want to make sure that you can be self-sufficient, that if you decide, hey, I want to make my own portfolio, make my own project, and there's something that somebody has already done, but I want to see how it works, because sometimes the documentation isn't enough, it isn't good enough, or there's just so much new content and so much new information, I just want to dig in. Or you're at a hackathon and you're like, I don't have time to read every single page. I have 2 hours. What can I do in 2 hours? So the reason why I'm clicking through all of this is so I can start to figure out what's going on. And so right off the bat, it's saying you'll find this post in your post directory. You can edit it and rebuild the site to see your changes. I'm going to be honest, I didn't read that when I was testing stuff before I put this workshop together. I went and figured it out myself by going back. Let's go ahead and open the folder. Yes. Open this one. I went here to this and I just deleted stuff. I duplicated this and changed the date. I changed the categories. Which I don't see anything about categories. So I'm like, what does categories mean? Like, is that tags for a blog post or is that something else? And you can see that it now tells us the requirement. Jekyll requires blog post files to be named according to the following format. Somehow when I was searching and reading through things, I did actually see that. But it has this dot markup. Does this have a dot markup? It has dot markdown. So make that make sense. Don't know why there's a discrepancy. That's something that could be looked into. And so you have the year, it has the formatting, yay, and it also has support for code snippets, where you can demonstrate, again, code. So again, if you're doing blog posts, tutorials, etc., one-stop shop. Great. And then you can see that you can write a description by editing it in the config YAML file. It'll appear in your document head meta for Google search results and your feed XML site description. Great. What does that even mean? What? Oopsie daisy. Come on. Did the server die? Oh, you know what? It did because I reopened the folder. Let's go ahead and do that. Jekyll serve. So this is something that it's a bit of a downside to Jekyll, but I already do this a lot whenever I'm running Python servers. I think there might be a library that does it. I just don't know about it, / kind of haven't really gotten around to it, or it doesn't always work. But when you're working in JavaScript, React, basically NodeMon or any sort of manager, you can have a server running that anytime you make changes and you hit save, the web page will automatically refresh for you. Jekyll doesn't do that. You do have to close the server, hit Control-C or Control-Z or whatever it is that however you exit your servers in order for it to render any changes, regardless of whether it's in the config or an actual post or anything else. So keeping that in mind, again, this is a statically generated site. What happens when we start goofing around? So again, there's all this lovely stuff. Great. We're going to pull this over, maximize this window, and now we're going to have fun and mess with it. And so I'm going to duplicate it, because why not? Except I'm going to change things, and I'm going to say, instead of it being on the 12th, it's going to be the 11th. And so I want to go back to the 11th, and I'm going to go ahead and change the date. I'm going to leave the categories alone, but I am going to make it somewhat different, where I'm going to delete some things so I know which post I'm looking at. And so, wait, did it just save? Everything I saw said it shouldn't have changed anything. JK, I guess it will update. So I did read some tutorials on Jekyll, and it said you need to restart your server. I guess they only meant that in regards to the configuration YAML file and not the actual server. Hey, that's great. That means editing is going to go so much faster. Yay. Cool. So we've made a new post. It has, again, these categories. I don't know what that means, so I'd probably go Google it. But now if we go through things, we have, let's see, will it give us our posts somewhere? Jekyll Cache, where am I looking? Assets. Aha. Oh, I see. So those categories are actually going to be folders. Interesting. And so we have an 11 folder, weird, and a 12 folder, also weird. But now we have all this HTML that's been generated for us, the styling, everything's been applied. I'm going to go ahead and zoom out just to see what it's doing for us. So let's put this here so we can see them side by side. I wanted to see, yes, so we have copy. Cool. So fairly consistent, but I want to see where I got rid of things. Right. So in the copy, I got rid of a bunch of this beginner text here where it's telling us more about how these dates formatting, etc., the code that it's working on. But again, it does all the formatting for us. We just have to write it in Markdown and it is fine. Because if we come back again to these posts, we can see that there's, again, Markdown formatting and some code snippets that allow us to see. Sorry. These code snippets so we can actually see what's going on. So let's say you're not familiar with HTML and CSS. This might be a great starting point to start seeing what the correlation is with what they're doing. That if you are using Markdown for different headers, perhaps it may give you different headers. Now, they obviously say here's this header class with post header, and that probably comes from, again, these titles and so on. So not a bad foray into, just posts where it's not that hard to write a post. You just have to fill out Markdown, which suddenly makes writing any blog posts, any tutorials so much easier than having to write the HTML yourself. Yay. And now we don't have to make ChatGPT do anything. Awesome. Now, if we skip ahead of posts, we're looking at this site folder. We don't really have to touch anything in the site folder because it's going to be what ends up getting built or generated whenever we update things in the post section, or if we happen to add another page in these top level folders. So we have index Markdown where it just has layout. We just know it's a home page. But then we have about Markdown, which has that about tab that we had earlier. So what happens when we duplicate it? Why not? Let's go ahead and copy it. We're going to paste it. And we're going to change this to instead be projects. And so we'll name this projects. We'll keep the layout page, but we'll change the permalink to also be projects. And we're going to go ahead and delete this stuff. This is our project page. Come back later. We're going to make that a header for giggles. And we're going to make this normal text. All right. Let's pull this over and see what happened. Voila. We now have just a very easy, nicely formatted another page, and all we had to do was just make a Markdown file for it, tell you that it was going to be a top-level page by putting it in the top level of folder, make sure it has a layout page, and then give it a new name. And if we were to click it, it automatically works. I'm not kidding when I said that this workshop really doesn't have to take 3 parts, but the reason in doing this is because I want to show you how I'm interacting with it, how I'm making the most out of it, and just getting familiar with Jekyll and with Minima, even though I'm going to be changing it later. So I could very well go through and just replace everything with Hacker McHacker's like resume. And we can spend some time coming up with that. You can send me messages, whatever. But what if everyone used this? It can be a little bit underwhelming. And so now it comes into play like, okay, let's pick a slightly better theme that maybe more aligns with our interest, something that we're actually willing and excited to edit. But if this is it for you, then this is it. In which case you have to spend more time on making sure that your content is good enough. And so content is not something I really wanted to get into in this workshop because there are other coaches talking about developing your portfolio. But I think it bears saying that as you work on your resume, as you work on your CV, or however it is that you're representing yourself online and on paper for employers, it's really important that you leave an impact, whether it's how you convey in your blog post the information that you know, or in your resume, what specific things that you've worked on, and so on and so forth. So maintaining professionalism, of course, in your website, but showcasing like by doing this setup, where have you devoted more time to? So having again better projects, better commenting, etc. Making sure that you have a strong navigatable profile is key. So we could put all sorts of different things on this title bar and this page bar. We could put about projects, skills, interests, job experience, and so on and so forth. But as you can see, I'm already up to 6. And I think that would be really crowded on the top. So now you have to start optimizing the information that you're sharing. So, what is most important to be portrayed on a portfolio website, or a resume website, or a CV website? And the answer is it depends on what you're looking for, how you choose to represent yourself, and generally like what the current trends are. So, the current trends that I'm aware of is that it's usually going to be your projects and your work experience. Your educational experience is probably going to be in your main page, your header, your about, whatever it is that your intro page is going to have your picture of yourself, a quick summary of what you're looking for or what your skill sets are, and that's about it. Maybe like 1 or 2 skills, or maybe the most annoying thing that I see. I really hate this. I get why, but I really hate it. There are so many people who have default portfolio profiles and pages that they've created, and they start off with the wave emoji saying, "Hi, I'm so and so." And I hate that because everyone does it and it's no longer unique and it just reads like everyone else's project. So pick a different emoji, pick a different way to say hello, or just do it differently. Even if you're using a template that everyone else is using, how do you stand out from the crowd? Because at the end of the day, the most memorable portfolio or project or person is the one who is more likely to get the job, depending on, of course, their skill sets, which also weighs into effect here, and of course, your quality in interviewing. But having a strong portfolio is really important. So if it's a matter of maybe this is your portfolio, but you have some really strong projects, awesome. Maybe you have a really like custom built Jekyll theme that you've put together, or home built bare bones HTML, CSS, React, whatever it is that you want to use. There are different ways to stand out, and there are different ways within them, even if something is common, to make yourself stand out. Okay, ranting over. I have chewed your ear off enough about that. Let's go back. Okay, so we have all these blog posts. We have our cute little 404. Great. I don't have anything to do with that. Nothing to do with index. I don't care about Jekyll Cache. I'm honestly ignoring most everything else. What's this gem file, though? So again, if you are not familiar with Jekyll, you're not familiar with Ruby, I have already mentioned that gem files are, or gems are packages, your libraries even. And so there's more notes for us, which is super nice, where we can say like, oh, if you want to use a different version of Jekyll, run bundle install, run all these things. That's really nice. And also it has our versioning. It has what gem theme that we're using. And this is what we'll be changing later. And you can also see if you want to use GitHub pages, remove the gem Jekyll above and uncomment the line below. Really nice. Awesome. And if you have plugins, put them here, which depending on the version of Jekyll that you're running, or I believe the Ruby version you're running, would determine whether or not you're using plugins versus, I think, gems. Not super sure on that one. That's something I'm also looking for this afternoon. But this is pretty much like our package.json, or what's it called? Not package.json. Your package file in JavaScript. Thank you. Jesus. Or your requirements.txt for a Python file. This is it, because now you even have a log file. You have your package log. This is it. So there are a lot of cross similarities, which again makes it pretty nice, because if you already have knowledge in either of those languages, you can transfer that knowledge over. So you're still learning and you still get the benefit of it, even if you're using a template or a theme. Because let's be honest, when I made my portfolio, even though it's using React, I found someone else's portfolio that I'm like, I hate everything you did, but I like your layout. I'm going to clone your project. I'm going to fix all the things that I don't like. I'm going to plug in my information. I'm going to make it better. And that's exactly what I did. I liked certain features in this person's website. I didn't appreciate that they're like, hi, my name is so-and-so. Great. I hate those emojis, but that's just me. Other people might love it, and that's fine. It's just not for me. So I ended up changing a lot of it, but I kept the skeleton because the bare bones is what I needed. I really liked how solid their skeleton was, that I could strip out their stuff, put my stuff in, and then further fix it and improve the design and the color scheme. That was a whole other very long deep dive on colors in React, or using the material UI stuff that I wanted. But this is how you can learn to make your own portfolio, especially if you're like, I really want to do some specific feature, but I have no idea how, or when I've done it, it doesn't work. Find someone who's done it. Find their repository, clone their repository, strip it all out, and put in your stuff. And that's kind of what we're doing here, is that we're stripping out stuff from the theme and making it work for us. Okay. I have once again ranted too much. We're going to come back to this gem file. I'm going to go take a look at the config file, because there was, again, that description that told us, hey, you know, go edit this elsewhere. It'll appear in your document stuff. So we have all sorts of things that it's excluding. Cool. We have some build settings. Interesting. We might have to change some things. Then we have all sorts of information to deal with the site settings. Looks like we can access them through site title, site email. You can create any custom variable you would like. Neat. This makes me think of Jinja 2. So if you are, again, familiar with Java, with Python, Jinja 2 is not Java. Oh my God, I think I would die if that was the case. Okay, but if you're familiar with Python, if you're familiar with Flask, you probably have worked with Jinja 2 to generate static websites, once again, using templating. And so you can inject variables or conditions, which again is what we were kind of seeing in that code preview in that blog post, which, heyo, some familiarity. So we love to see that if we have that experience. And if not, that's another connection point that you can make, that you can transfer your learning elsewhere. Alrighty, cool. And now this answers our earlier question, which I clearly misread, was that for technical reasons, this file is not reloaded automatically when you use the command. So if you change the file, restart the server process. Cool. I had no idea. We all learned something. But as I mentioned, there is the fact that this is using YAML. So if you're not familiar with it, of which it's been a while since I've used it, I've only worked with existing things where I've made tiny modifications, so I'm copying things. If I really wanted to go ahead and deep dive on that, I could, and it's really nice that they gave me links. So all in all, it's really nice to have things that are auto-filled, because it just, now I don't have to Google as much, except I still totally did that anyway. I'm emulating my research findings. It's fine. Cool. So we are at the hour mark. I've mostly just gone over like what is the default minima theme, getting Jekyll started, showing you what we're going to do. And I want to pause and see if there are any questions, comments, or concerns. So we'll take a couple minutes as a quick break. If you want to run off and grab some water, like I said, we'll take a couple minutes. I'll be here answering questions in the meantime. If you want to stay for those questions, or if you're like, I really got to jump out for a bit, but I do want to hear those questions, again, this stuff will be recorded, because it is, of course, being streamed. So it'll be on our YouTube channel once I finish, like within like 30 to 45 minutes, I want to say it's usually up on YouTube. So take a quick break. But in the meantime, I do want to, again, answer any questions that come up. So go ahead and post them. I also know there's totally a delay. I am seeing no questions. Are you thinking about questions? Or does it all seem pretty straightforward? Which is nice, honestly, if it is. Nothing. That's okay. Again, it is very nice to have something that is very easy to work with. But now I want to change themes. So we're going to do that. Let me pull up the web page. Where was the one that I opened? Oh, side question. What's the best way to follow you and when you stream? That's a good question because even I don't know when I stream. I think our Global Hack Week schedule. I'm also answering this because I'm giving people time to come back from their break if they are taking one. Where is the... Oh. It used to be that our Global Hack Week schedule would say who was running the event. Does not seem to be the case for this week. I will message our MLHers and see if that's going to stay the same. So the best way to follow me, God, do I even have social media? Not really. I don't really use my social media. I am actually at most Global Hack Weeks. And so I usually do Today in Global Hack Weeks. You can look at the schedules ahead of time. Actually, does the event page have it? No. Yeah, okay. Oh, but that means you have to go through each and every event. I don't really announce when I stream. I just show up. I come up with ideas. Okay, but so for Global Hack Week, I try to do at least one technical series and then like mini events in Today in Global Hack Week. But if you'd like to see my past work, I'm pretty sure most all of it is on YouTube. And you can probably go through, like, it's always in my office. So like, as long as you see this background, of my cat or like my tool chest or whatever, you're good. But I try to do beginner projects that, again, are informative, particularly when classes are not going to go over this stuff, like Jekyll. So that is a great question that I don't have an answer to. I'm going to think about that one. And if you follow up with me at my next, what's it called? My next technical workshop, which will be tomorrow morning. So in like 16-ish hours for the part 2 of this, ask me again and I should have an answer for you. Hey, you don't have a ton of questions. That's awesome. I'm really glad that it's been informative for you. Yay. That's usually the goal of my workshops, is that I try to make sure that people walk away with an understanding, even if they're not necessarily following along, which does turn into a lot of ranting. But again, it's like, I want people to walk away with skill sets, even if it's like, well, I'm not interested in this, but how can I leverage this elsewhere? And that's a big thing about being a hacker, is how do you take what you've learned somewhere else and apply it in a different way that might be similar. So for example, I'm relating a lot of things to what I've seen in my coding experience. Like, oh yeah, these double brackets looks like Jinja 2 to me. Like, I just need to figure out how to make the variable. What's it called? Like the package management stuff. I'm like, oh, well, I have some JavaScript experience. So like, is it going to refresh the way it is? Because Python doesn't, and so on and so forth. And so making those connections comes with more experience, of course, but sometimes you need someone to draw those connections so you can start thinking that way. And so my hope is to do that. But I've given a couple minutes for a very long break. I appreciate that. You might be interested in my past streams. Not that I'm being like, oh, go watch my stuff. It's more like, if you're curious, you can go looking through past Global Hack Weeks. I've been at almost every one for the last few months. I think there's one I skipped or 2 I skipped, but yeah. Cool. Okay, so let's get back to it. I said I have notes. I have ADHD, can you tell? Okay, we did that. We played around. I already have a theme that I wanted to work with. I opened that in the tab elsewhere. So let's go change it. Actually, let's see if I can. What I want to do. Okay, so this was something I ran into, is that when I looked up Jekyll themes, a lot of them cost money. And I don't like spending money. So where's the one that I actually went through? Hello, Peanut. You're sitting on my stickers. How could you do this to me? Does this have what I was looking for? No, this is not it. I'm looking for the link I was using to go find stuff, and it's just not working. Let's try there. And then go search Jekyll themes, repositories, device. Okay. So, to another way to go find themes that you might be interested that you don't want to pay for, because don't pay for them as a student. I just searched Jekyll themes up top, and I sorted by most stars, where I'm like, all right, well, I want to go looking at things. So again, here are different things for different purposes. So minimal mistakes is the Jekyll theme for building a personal site, blog, project documentation, or portfolio. Alfolio is a Jekyll theme for academics. So again, thinking about people who don't code that often or don't have time to code that often or really get into things and they just want to plug and play, depending on your needs, somebody has probably made a theme for you. If you decide that you want to do technical writing, which is a really important skill, especially as far as careers go, especially if you go into like project management or you need to write reports for your engineering managers, etc. Food for thought. This isn't quite what I searched, I think, because it is introducing a lot of other things. Right, Minima, the one that we're using, is a great theme for writers, bloggers, people who are making those kinds of things. As you can see, there's quite a few. Yeah, here's the one that I had found. I wanted a content-first sliding sidebar. Minimal Jekyll theme to host your resume or CV on GitHub with a few clicks. Cute. Yeah, so the point is, people out there have made things. Don't reinvent the wheel yet. Find something you like, rip it. Put all your stuff in, be happy with it, and then go, okay, now I want to make my own because I don't like this part. Or let me recolor it because I don't like these colors. Whatever. That's how you can best make the most out of getting something out there and still having it look nice. Because like that's what I did with my portfolio. Every time I do a full reskin and everything, originally I would do it by hand, by writing, and just like do it myself. And it would take so much longer. And I'm like, I don't have this kind of time. I would love to. I would love it to be like an every week I do something new with it, but it just doesn't work that way. And so it's much easier for me to instead find things that I like that people have done and then copy it, because the greatest form of flattery is to copy. However, again, I still make it my own, or I'm like, okay, their stuff is out of date, or hey, this library is deprecated. I want to use a different library or whatever. Or maybe I'm like, I want a completely different theme, but I like the skeleton. And so I'll rip out whatever it is that I need to change and work on it piece by piece. So, like I said, I already found a theme that I liked. Let's see, where did I put it? I want... Cool. Alrighty. So, the nice thing about most of these themes too is that they give you a preview. Again, very nice, very pretty. I liked it. But they also tell you how to use it. It's built on top of a setup, how to install and how to use it. So we're going to probably follow those guidelines. It gives us some customizable option. So we would have our layout, our page. This whole thing here is called front matter, by the way. So now I'm going to start introducing some of the key words that even I'm still learning. But front matter is a way of telling the page what it's supposed to do. So when we create that initial markdown about projects, whatever it is. We have to give it a layout and we have to give it a title. And so that front matter tells Jekyll what it needs to do with it. As you can see, why require a specific layout? Jekyll will return all pages. So if there's anything that you've added and a whole bunch of other things, there are ways to make to just get around it. Cool. Alrighty. Looks like we can apply themes, which I like. I really like that I can it's just built into it. Awesome. And looks like there's 8 themes. And honestly, I really like these colors. Maybe because they're bright, probably. But then I can choose what theme I want to use in the default HTML layout. Awesome. Good to know. And I can create my own theme. Cute. I don't want to do that right now, but that is good to know. And reverse layout. Oh, looks like I can move the sidebar. Good to know. So far, I'm happy with it. Like I said, I already found this and I liked it from a design standpoint. Now I'm just reading through and being like, does this actually meet what I need? Again, the beauty of having good documentation means I can be like, yes, no, or like all yeses, let's do it. But nice. So I can also change how the overlay works. Yay. Okay, so here's the question. We saw earlier that GitHub Pages had a few things that just automatically worked on it. Does this work on GitHub Pages? Let's go find out. And again, GitHub Pages, Lanyon. Looks like styles are not rendering. Seems to be a common issue. And this is something I've learned that I'm like, hey, just because I like something doesn't necessarily mean it will actually work. And so we're going to spend the time to see, does it even work? Because if it doesn't, back to the drawing board. If it does, then we're good to go. Let's see. So here's a README for setting it up. Let's go back to, it said pool, the Jekyll butler. Builds Jekyll sites, blah, blah, blah. As is or in conjunction with one of the official themes. Ooh, I didn't see that one. Okay, but do you work on GitHub Pages? Let's see. Custom domain for setup. We don't need that yet. We'll talk about that next workshop. Let me actually go make that note because I was doing research on that earlier. Setup. Okay. Custom categories. What is prose? Examples, robot.txt, page-specific edits, yada, 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 yada. That's not that helpful. Let's see what Stack Overflow has to say as far as issues that they've run across. Styles are not rendered. Similar to this question. Solution doesn't work. Main theme works fine. These are just CSS. So logically, it should work. Cool. Let's do it. So how do I go ahead and use it? See usage guidelines for how to install. Great. So I need to do dependencies. We have Jekyll. We don't have these. Run Jekyll on Windows, syntax highlighting, yada, yada. What if I just want to run it? Can't I just install the gem? Download pool, start Jekyll. Okay. That's not helpful. This is not helpful at all. Whatever your Jekyll site's root directory, GitHub pages. Okay, yeah. So it looks like it is fine to set that up, but you're not exactly telling me how I'm supposed to use it. Learn more. This is just going to give us that. Okay, cool. Theme built on top of pool. Just download and start the server. Here's dependencies, but just download pool. I mean, I can clone it. I have seen a couple of things where people are like, just clone it. I'm like, okay, well, let's go clone it then. Let's go open a new window. New window. Clone Git repository. Clone from GitHub. Pool. Actually, can I just download this? Let's go find out. What is this? Is on pool. Okay. Slash. Give me my slash button. Righty. Repositories. Select as destination. Open a new window. Okay. Cool. Let's go back to their instructions. It was that You can see where my lack of familiarity has started to play a role. Well, we'll see if it works. Now you get a little bit less, what's it called? Structured teaching. Now you get, I'm learning on the fly. All right, so it's installed the gems. Serve. Why are you still screaming? Okay, what are actually these error messages? We should actually read this. I am in here. Looks like you don't have Jekyll paginate. Run Jekyll with bundle exec. This is why we read errors. What was that bundle exec command? I have it up here. Bundle exec Jekyll serve. Paste. Could not. Then why? Could not locate gem file. Why are you like this? What do I need to do to make you work? Sure, run Jekyll on Windows. Maybe that's what we need to look at. Guide is here to help. Great. New site that doesn't work. Thank you. We already did this. Let's see. Let's have it do things. Okay. But not, yeah, I'm aware because I'm trying to get you to run things and it's not working. All right, let's try one more thing. And what I am searching is running Jekyll on Windows for Lanyon. And that's the GitHub repository for downloads, but where could it be? Download. Not seeing anything. I should have tested downloading this. I thought it was as simple as just updating the configs because a couple other templates that I found were like, oh, just change your config to whatever the name is. I was like, well, that's what you should do for all of them. No, evidently not. Boo. This is the issue we saw earlier. Let's see. I'm still searching. Oh. Okay, no, this is still the same thing. Okay, you know what? Fine. Then let's go find gem. Ugh. I want paginate, apparently. Jekyll paginate. Actually, let's go look at some past commands just to make sure we're doing things great. Nope, it's just the same thing over again. Okay. What I need. I forgot an install. Derp. Alrighty. Build. Oh, it did actually build. Okay. I guess it was that simple. Yay! Okay, now let's access it. That's not what we wanted, though. Did I cancel the server in the other one? No. Yes, cancel that one. Let's cancel this one. Run you again. Now you're not going to be conflicting. Hello! It looks great. So what you didn't see was just because a tab opened up on my other monitor. I had both servers running. So when they were both receiving at port 4000, basically it just shows me what came first. So I had to go close the server so I could run this one correctly. But now we have it. So let's talk about what I just did. Because I did not talk about what I just did. So I have a Git extension on my Visual Studio Code. And I went and found the repository that we were using, this pool Lanyon. And so originally I was like, okay, well, if you said that it's built on top of pool, then just download pool. And I was going to originally do that. And then I realized that doesn't make sense because I want Lanyon. And so I'm like, well, maybe I should just clone this repository so I can download it, which they should have said clone, but it is what it is. Because then I'll just have everything by default as it is with the latest things, whatever it needs to be, and it'll be fine. So the difference in what we did was when we ran Jekyll new, it by default has the theme minima and does everything for us. In order for us to get this theme, unlike what I'd seen, I had to clone the repository to build on top of it. Or again, download a zip and then open that zip, and then I would have no remote paths if I wanted to go about doing it that way, because right now the remote paths are associated with this repository. So a little less than ideal, but it is what it is. But it works now and it looks great. This is again the preview, but coming back to it, let's see if I can. Now I have everything and I have a sidebar. It's so nice. Yay. So what we can do is we can go through and update a bunch of different things. This is nothing that I have to really put on a repository by any means, just because, again, this is an example. This is all I did was I cloned the repo just to get the theme that I wanted. That said, there are other ways to put themes on, which is what I expected to happen, which is why I was very confused when that did not happen. And I'll show you with the other one. So my understanding with some other themes is that I just have to change this name here on the build settings of certain themes. And I believe I also had to change it in the gem file to change the theme to whatever it is that I wanted. And so I think it depends on whether it's like a gem install or not, because Lanyon is not a gem install, as we have just learned. Joy. So let's do a little more spelunking, if you will. so that way we can investigate what we can do. Let's go ahead and close that. Let's do some more investigation. That was dangerous, but okay. And let's see what there is. So we have an includes file, which has all this autofilled stuff. Looks like it's probably generated. We might not even have to touch it. Something tells me, yeah, so the code below dynamically generates a sidebar of nav pages with the layout page in the front matter. See README for usage. So as long as we make whatever page it is that we're looking for, let's see. Nav of pages with layout page. So if we were to look at index, we have layout default, so that's not going to be included. Okay. If we have about, that is a layout page, so it is going to be included. And let's go ahead and see. Right now we have home, about, download, and GitHub projects. We have about, download as a zip for it, GitHub project doesn't work. Interesting. But let's go again, do the same thing we did. We're going to go ahead and copy this, make a new folder. We're going to rename this to be projects. And notice it's an MD file, not a markdown, but it's still the same thing. And we're going to also change this to projects. And we're going to also delete this and say, this is our projects page. And again, this is not including any of the fancy stuff that we would need. Okay, so now we have our projects page that now shows us, hey, this is our projects page. Okay, so we can go through, we can change a bunch of stuff, add whatever it is that we want. Yay. But let's talk about GitHub projects. So normally when you create your own portfolio, you have to manually update all the stuff. Like I had to do that with my portfolio where I had to create a list of the projects and the names and the metadata and whatever it is that I wanted to include, potential like links in case there's a hosted website, whatever. And even with my job description stuff, I had to think about, well, what information am I portraying? And I had to write all that down. That's very manual and that sucks. And the beauty of why I chose Jekyll was because there is a default gem file. Perhaps I have to double check that. It says it's default. I haven't quite confirmed that it does actually do that. That will let you access your GitHub metadata. So your repositories, your projects, the title, the description, when you last committed, all that kind of information is at your fingertips through a gem package that is associated with Jekyll. Or you could use that same templating double bracket to access various things and potentially create a dynamic list of your projects, maybe the top 10 with the recent star with the most stars, or the top 10 most recently updated projects. So that way it's constantly dynamically going about doing things whenever it's rebuilt, which is very nice, takes all the guesswork out of how do I portray these projects, and instead you just have to make sure that on your GitHub repo, you do a pretty good job explaining it, which is arguably easier and less annoying than having to do it yourself, which again, very nice. However, we do need to investigate how we do that. And so let me go pull up GitHub. I'm looking for these. Okay, so there is a Jekyll plugin to get GitHub namespace values or GitHub metadata, which is what I'm referring to. And so metadata, aka site.github, where it will update with repository metadata, sets the title, if there's none set, site's description, URLs, base URLs, etc. And all we have to do is add it to Jekyll's GitHub metadata. Yay. And because we are using 3.3.6, I'm still investigating this whole thing. However, we are able to use this once we add this to our plugins. And as for what it's doing is, this is some more on the documentation about it. So we can reference any of the keys, prefacing it with site.github. So coming back to that variables thing that I said, hey, let's talk about this later. This is those variables that we would have been setting, where we could say, hey, give us the project title. And so this is everything we would possibly need to render our GitHub repositories in the plainest sense of the way. So this is a for loop saying for every repository in our public repositories, get the name and the URL. So if you're familiar with Jinja 2, this is almost exactly the same, almost. And if you're familiar with React, this is another way of generating components, or at least getting the data to generate components. Yay. So the following sample information is exposed to Jekyll templates in the GitHub namespace. Okay, so we can get versions of stuff. Do we need that? I don't think so. Hostname, probably good to know. The page's hostname. So if you have a custom domain name on your project, really important, especially if you're like, hey, do you want to try out this link? And then it has whatever your page's hostname is, which I do have a project that has a custom domain name that I've broken in the last 2 hours. So once that resolves, we'll see if we can get it to work. But my hope is to do something similar where you might have like a project card and you can say things like, try it out, or here's the GitHub repo, because then you can just pull whatever the GitHub repo's URL is, as well as whatever the host name is. If we can have access to that, maybe we'll have to see. We have some API URLs, help URLs. Okay. Pages environment, I don't think we need those. We don't need build revisions. We might want the project title, the tagline. So if we don't have good taglines, now's a really good time to update it. Maybe, oh, here we go. Here's the repository URL. Awesome. All sorts of different URLs for people to try things. So let's say you didn't have a custom domain name for people to try it out because you're hosting it somewhere. Maybe you just want to direct them to how to clone the GitHub. That's another way people can try things out. Not bad. Or they can download a zip. A little bit dangerous. The whole, automatically downloading zip things. Instead, I would clarify that your button should be, download if you're interested. Language, if we didn't set it, probably doesn't need it to happen. URL. Okay. So this is exactly what we would want for that custom project domain. If you don't have one, it'll usually be your username.github.io/the repository name. But because I have custom domains for all of my stuff, that doesn't apply to me. So I'm going to need the CNAME of whatever my repository is. Awesome. Maybe I wanted to tell people who my contributors were on a project, especially if maybe it's an open source project and I wanted credit for something or I wanted to give credit to others. That's something to consider. And if you're somebody who's curious about open source or wants to showcase what kinds of different licenses you have experience with, this is also something pretty useful. So altogether, not a bad idea. And again, as long as we have good updates on our repositories, which I'm going to tell you, I have garbage updates on my repositories. There are terrible descriptions, usually me complaining about something because that's how I make my projects. There's one of my first projects that I streamed about that I was like, I just want to travel in peace. And that's my description. That is not a good description. So this metadata stuff is actually pretty nice in that not only will it make it so that way you don't have to type anything, but it will absolutely curb check you if you have garbage things like I do. Being that maybe you need a better title for your project. Maybe you need a better description. Maybe you do want to have a custom domain name, in which case you need to start looking into what that is. And we'll talk about that, like I said, at the next workshop, which goes more into like setting up the GitHub pages, getting this updated. But we're basically at the end. So once again, I want to open up to questions. This is what we're looking ahead to. Let me go ahead and add something. Okay. So let's come back. We went through all the different ways you can install things, talked about how to make it and serve it, learned about why I need to install gems when they tell me to and not just assume it will automatically install it for me. Lesson learned. But also how you can go ahead and make things work for you, regardless of your skill level. Because frankly, yes, a portfolio should be a learning experience, but it shouldn't delay you from having your portfolio visible. So we're already well on track that it has some form of basic blogging. I'm sure we can set stuff up or find an example of someone using Lanyon to do that. As for what the bonus thing is, not sure. That's something to think about, especially if you come to tomorrow's stream. Give me any ideas you might have. Some people do interests or skill sets. Some people will do timelines of their work history. lots of different things. Who knows? But I think we're well on track to get that GitHub repo info done for tomorrow, and at least filling out Hacker McHacker's skill sets and maybe other things that there might be worth putting into his portfolio or their portfolio. Tomorrow, at least in the morning, we'll be, again, filling in information, getting it set up with a custom domain name on GitHub, and adding in that GitHub metadata access and rendering it. It may not look the best, but we are going to be at a point that we can do something with it. And that's my goal for part 2. Part 3 really depends on what we get done in part 2 and what it is that I can drum up to this afternoon when I'm still putting some of the stuff together. Because again, my goal was get everybody on the same page installation-wise, because that took me a really long time a couple days ago, and it shouldn't have taken that long, but I think it's because I was busy with other stuff. But I noticed that there were a lot of pitfalls, which is why I did want to spend more time on what can you do, how can you do it, and with what you have before you let yourself move on, because it is very easy to jump ahead. How do we make sure that you can go ahead and be your best self with the best knowledge you can while not losing time into deep dives that you don't have to do just yet? So, yeah. In the meantime, like I said, questions, comments, concerns, but if you do have ideas of what you want to see me do in the next 2 streams, I'm happy to take those suggestions. We'll see what's feasible because I have time to test it out, like I said, this afternoon. And also between streams, hopefully tomorrow. JK, I'm in back-to-back meetings and streams. So maybe not testing it tomorrow, but we'll basically wrap things up, get you to a point that you have your own portfolio, whether it's super easy through Jekyll and your own preferred theme, or you choose to make it yourself however you'd like. There is no right way to do a portfolio. There are a few wrong ways, just in being not clear about what your goal of that portfolio is. But at the end of the day, the portfolio is to represent you and to ensure that employers know what you're hoping to get out of it and what your skill sets are. So, cool. I love how I had no idea that I had garbage internet connection this whole time. It was great. I really hope things came across and not just garbled because signal. Yeah, this one is a more short stream, but also very good, so that way you can take a break, grab some food. As for who's coming up next, let me go pull that up. I think it actually is Kari. No, it's not Kari, it's UT. I was wrong. Alrighty. So if you are interested in wrapping up your workshops with UT, he'll be finishing up his mobile app development right after this, literally in the next 30 minutes. So feel free to take a break, get some rest, drink some water, have a snack, have a meal, whatever it is you need to do so you can show up for UT and enjoy his last bit of his stream. It seems like you'll be working on cross-platform apps using React Native. Powered by Expo. So if you decide that you want a repository project to show up on your portfolio that, goes really well with tomorrow's stream, consider going and checking in ahead of time. I'll go ahead and share his check-in if you plan to check into his stream, given that it is coming right up. And I encourage you to show him the same love y'all have shown me. Yeah, thank you so much for your patience. I know this was very much more a theory-based workshop, but it is, again, setting expectations for tomorrow where we'll really dig in, and we shouldn't have so many issues because we'll know what we're doing. We'll have a pretty clear understanding of some of the concepts that we learned today to actually make things happen tomorrow. Great. I'll stay on for about 5 minutes in case there's any other questions. Or take suggestions for things that we can do, but otherwise, feel free to drop off. Again, thanks so much for joining. Oh my gosh, it's Jen Marie. No, you were so close. It's okay. The recordings will be up soon. We mostly spent today on theory and doing setup and struggling with installing a theme, but got it working. So if you manage to get things installed and you want to work with this, you're more than welcome to join us tomorrow, obviously, and hit the ground running, or you can automatically fill in stuff as you go if you want to make a portfolio with Jekyll. That's true. That's also why I do have these instances where I don't plan everything. I think the last 2 Global Hack Weeks, I've planned significantly ahead because I had limited time. Or like I only had like 1 technical stream. But because I have 3 workshops, I'm like, we have room to make mistakes and to learn from those. Because if you don't make mistakes on stream, you're gonna be like so stressed out about because you think streamers are perfect, and I'm like, no, no, I make mistakes all the time. I make mistakes and they eat workshop time, and it sucks. But we learn a lot out of it, and usually it's that Copilot introduces bugs for me. But Copilot didn't have any issues today, so it was all me. So I can't keep complaining that. Oh my gosh, that's cute! I've been seeing the Lego tuxedo cat set, and I'm like, I want it, but I don't have a tuxedo cat. I have a very sassy, angry, not calico. What's the other one? Oh my gosh, why am I blanking on her fur color? Tortie, yeah. She's a tortie. She's got tortitude. But that's so cute. Congratulations and happy birthday or happy early birthday. Nah, she's a tortie. She's got but she does have like little raccoon rings on her tail. And we're like, wow, you're a real life trash panda. Because she was a street cat. And she decided that she didn't want to be a street cat anymore and just walked into our home. And now we have Peanut. So she is a special one. But she really likes working or sleeping in her window while I work, which I appreciate. Although, as you can see, she's currently sleeping on my stickers right now that I need to put away. My special child. Oh shoot, I forgot. So if you did not come to Today in Global Hack Week, you probably missed it. But Ryan number 3, I was gonna say the one who likes lettuce, but they all like lettuce. I think it's Ryan number 3. Ryan Lay. We were joking during Today in Global Hack Week that we should have a quiet takeover of Peanut. That lettuce it's the time of lettuce is done. It is now time for Peanut. And so peanut emojis are a good idea to spam every so often and have no context because it's a peanut takeover for a career week and possibly for the end of the year. So something to, if you would like to be part of a quiet little momentum moving, I think somebody said it was the Peanut Coup 2024 or something. So yeah, no context, just send emojis in chat of peanuts and be like, the Peanut Coup. Alrighty, with that, I'm going to go ahead and drop off, make sure that I'm prepped for tomorrow. So that way we've got content and things that we can get set up with minimal issue. But yeah, thanks so much for joining, y'all. I appreciate it. Yeah, you get this. Somebody earlier, since her name is Peanut Butter, they did the peanut emoji and then the butter emoji, and I'm like, no, we just call her Peanut. Her full name is Peanut Butter, but she's like, why are you talking about me? All right. Enjoy the brief break. Make sure you catch UT's stream if you're interested in wrapping up your cross-platform application. And I will see you all tomorrow for the next stream. Today in Global Hack Week, another stream, and I think Tetris. There's a lot going on in the next 2 days. So have a good one, everyone. Thanks for joining.